Welcome to the Sportsbiz Show. Today we have with us Professor Scott Rosner, who is the Academic Director of Sports Management at Columbia University. He's a strategic advisor to many sports properties and teaches courses on sports management at Columbia, one of which I've taken as well. He's previously taught courses on sports business at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. As someone who gets a lot of questions on the business of sports and sports management, I've made it a point to direct them to an expert like Professor Rosner, who will be able to answer them and take you through the business of sports and sports management programs, what the future holds for the EdTech space in the sports industry, how institutions like Columbia are maneuvering through COVID and enhancing their offerings to students, what you can expect whether you're new to the industry, just starting out, or whether you're an experienced professional looking to transition into the sports industry, and whether you should go for a sports management program or not. So if you identify across the spectrum, this episode is for you. But before we dive into it, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel across audio and video. You can also sign up for a free newsletter called the Sportsbiz Slick, which releases tips, trends, and news on the business of sports. The link will be in the show notes. And now, let's dive into it. Hello, Professor Rosner. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing extremely well, Ananya. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's a pleasure to have you. For those who don't know, the background behind Professor Rosner is that of Columbia's campus. I think it's the Butler Library. Just for the uninitiated, and we're both wearing sort of Columbia gear. So this is going to be a fun chat. I'm looking forward to it.
As am I, very, very much so. And there's Columbia's campus, actually very much what it looks like at this very moment. That's a virtual background, of course, but very much what it looks like at this very moment on a beautiful late winter, early spring day in New York City.
I can only imagine. I do miss it, but I'm going to get into the questions so we don't go a very nostalgic route. First question, as the Academic Director of Columbia's Sports Management Program, what do you direct most of your time and day-to-day to for the program specifically?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's an interesting position to be in because I am also a professor of professional practice at the university. So you wear, multiple hats. I would say that 90% of my time is spent though as the academic director of the program. Just in terms of making sure the programs are running well, that the co-curricular programs are running well, working with faculty, addressing any issues that might come up with them. A lot of strategic planning, a lot of partnership work that we do with other organizations, a lot of more recently time spent on development for the program, so fundraising as we would think about it, and for some initiatives that we're looking at there, we have an administrative team. I'm not the only one who is doing this. We've got a group of us that is incredibly strong, that is really a pleasure to work with on a day-to-day basis, but it's leading that group as well. We had a fantastic event yesterday. We've got another event today. I actually taught a full course in the classroom last week. I'm in a professorial role. So it's a lot of, it's a lot of different things, keeps me very busy and quite happy.
Awesome. Now, sports management as a vertical has been growing worldwide. There's always this debate around sort of education versus practicality in the sports world. What is Columbia's focus and drive to differentiate that and move ahead of the pack? How do you strive to be different in this space?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, there are a lot of sport management programs globally, right? There are hundreds and hundreds of them across the world, many of which are based in the United States. So we really think about our program as needing to live up to the standard that is set by Columbia University as a whole. And Columbia University, as I think many of the listeners know, is one of the most prestigious universities in the world. It's consistently ranked, at the very top of the list of universities globally. Historically, it's very rarely outside of the top 5 to the extent that you believe in those rankings. That's a kind of a North Star to point to, but it is one of the most prestigious universities in the world. And so we have an obligation as our program to live up to the overall quality of Columbia University. So we focus on a few things. So we talk about the faculty and that differentiates our program from other programs across the world. It's an interesting group of faculty. Most of our faculty are actually not full-time, they're adjunct, which doesn't work for every university. It works for ours because we are located in New York City. So we have kind of the pick of the best and brightest faculty members and industry experts in their respective areas and subdomains. So that allows us to do things that I think a lot of other sport management programs around the world really can't do, with a small core of full-time faculty and a much larger adjunct group. We also have the advantage of being in New York City. And so, we talk about sports capital of the world, where, headquarters for every major sports property, in terms of a league, are here. We've got every sport organization has at least some presence in New York City, save for one or two, maybe in the collegiate space, that is present in New York. And I think the third thing that we really think about is the notion of having a really diverse curriculum. And again, because we're in New York City and we have access to so many different people, we have, really a depth and a breadth to our program that, again, many other programs don't offer. We talk about, we're along the lines of, 30 different adjunct faculty teaching courses in nearly as many subjects. So there's a lot to choose from as well. And, students have the opportunity to kind of really paint their own picture for the areas that they might want to focus in and go into. We don't have a specialty. Some programs, if you want to work in ticket sales, that's the program to go to. If you want to work in facilities, there's a program that's a specific program that you might want to pick. We have the luxury of having, a breadth of those subjects and depth.
Do you recommend an average age at which one should start pursuing or one should choose to pursue a sports management program, regardless of what their experience level is or where they come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me address the first part, the sense of the diversity of our student body. And our students come from all over the world. Our typical class is about 1/3 international students, and representing, an array of countries. There's no kind of one or two countries that our students hail from. So about 1/3 international. And you're right. And Anya, as from experience, it is a melting pot in many respects, and we are very intentional, about that. It's been a little different in the last year. Our international population is smaller over the last year because of COVID restrictions. It is. We're historically, like I said, we're about 1/3. We're a tag under 20% international right now. And I know this because I just saw the numbers yesterday. We are, it's just students applicants who couldn't get visas, that sort of thing, or are unable to travel if they could get a visa, unable to travel to New York City for the program and wanted to be in person. So it's a little different right now. But I don't have any reason to think that will change and go back to the way it's been historically. So that's the first part about the melting pot comment. The second, with respect to, is there an optimal age? So, I don't know if I can say that there's an optimal age to come to a program. and any sport management program, not just ours. There are certainly students who come right from their undergraduate experience, and because they don't have as much work experience, they tend to have to get in. You've got to have really some things that stand out in your application. It's a very competitive application process, and so typically they've done a lot of internships at the collegiate level. Their grades are very good. They've challenged themselves. That sort of thing. The average age in our program has, for the last few years, been around 25 and a half years old. So it tends to be students who have the average student, right? So again, now there's extremes on both ends, but the average student has 4 years of work experience, sometimes in the sports industry, and other times outside the sports industry, and they're looking to pivot their careers into the industry. And so certainly there. And then we have some who are, because again, you think about 25.7 or so as an average on the back end. We have students who are a little bit older, and they've either been working in the industry and they're looking to kind of pivot what they do within sports, or they're just looking to, to finally really pursue their passion point of working in the industry and, going down the road. And we're kind of the bridge, right, between what they were doing before and what they hope to do, and between the education we provide, the programming we provide, the network that we provide access to. We become that bridge for those students. Yeah. So there's no one, I guess, to go back and summarize, there's no one perfect candidate. There's no one perfect age. It really depends what on the individual candidate.
Absolutely. That makes sense. What do you usually look for in an ideal candidate?
It's a great question. So it's funny, applicants oftentimes presume that we want passion, and we do want passion, but we want way more than passion, right? You're not doing this. You're not getting into a career in sports if you don't love the sports industry, generally speaking, if you don't love sports. So we're looking at, that's kind of a given in a lot of respects, that you love this. That doesn't distinguish any candidate from any other candidate. What we're looking for is, and again, it depends on your background, but have you demonstrated a real potential to succeed in the industry when you are finished with the program, right? So, it's often said that the best predictor of future success is past success. So academically, the student has to be able to handle it. They have to be able to thrive in the classroom. It's hard, right? I mean, we pride ourselves on being, a difficult academic experience, and that proves to be the case for most of our students. It's not supposed to be easy. It's Ivy League graduate education, so the student has to be able to, at a minimum, do well in the classroom, right? So that's the first thing, and without that, it's an automatic. It's automatically a no as a potential student, and I think that almost goes without saying, but it's important to say. So that's one. And there's no minimum GPA requirement or anything like that we look at, but it is a necessity. Then it's okay. What else? If you can, what else about you, right? So what do your recommenders say about you, and what don't they say about you, right? What is your personal statement address, your essay? There's a video essay that we use that kind of gives off some random question of like 200 or 300 different questions. How do you handle that? Can you think on your feet? How do you present yourself in that kind of on the spot situation that you are put into? Now, you didn't have that when you applied. That's a relatively new feature. That's a couple of years old in the application process. So we certainly look at that. Is what you are looking for something we can help you attain, right? Our program isn't for everybody, and it's not just because you can't get in. You might be completely academically qualified to do so, but what you want to do doesn't match what we want to do, right? Or what we can do, with the program. So, we have students who say, I want to open a fitness studio, right? Of some sort. Well, that's not really what we do, right? And so it's a bit of a misunderstanding of what our program is, and I think that, or I want to be a manager at a gym, right? Is one that an application I saw the other day. And again, very qualified applicants, but just the fit isn't there between what they want to do and what we want to do and what we do. And I think the other piece of it, certainly we look at, can we help this student? Can we help this applicant get what they are looking for? That's part of what I just mentioned. And then we look for, writing ability, ability to communicate, I think is important. We see those in the essays, and in both written and the video essay that the students need to do. So there's a lot of different things that we look at in evaluating the student. And I think the other thing is that, we've started to really look at how students will handle failure, right?
Interesting.
And that's trickier, right? That's a harder thing to look at. And there's little clues that we look at, like, this student, looks like someone who may not be able to handle it, may not be able to stand up as easily when they fall down. It's not easy for anyone to stand up when they fall down, but for some, you look at it, you're like, I don't know if this individual may be able to do this. And with others, there's something in the essay, in the in the letters of recommendation, et cetera, part of it that gives off an indication that they've got some grit to them.
Right. Okay, let's say the students got into a sports management program, specifically to Columbia. How do they optimize the program and the resources that the program provides? And how much of a role is it of the university versus the role of the student to make sure they've used the complete potential of the program and what it has to offer?
Yeah. So again, terrific question. So it's on both, right? It's on both the student and on the program. And on the program side, we've kind of, got this to a place where there's a lot of different aspects of the program that we offer. From when you get in, we've got, from the students admitted to the program, they're in immediate contact with an admissions counselor, who kind of walks them through the process of getting accepted. A woman named Gina Malera fills that role for us right now. She's wonderful. And she's been a tremendous addition to our program. And then once the student is committed and they're coming to Columbia, they're handed off seamlessly to our academic advisor, right? So a woman named Deja Huff, who's been with us for a couple of years and knows the program extraordinarily well. And you're nodding your head because you know Deja as well. And she's phenomenal. And so and then from that part knows the program can advise students as they come in. Hey, you might want to think about classes X, Y, and Z, right? If this is what you want to do. And then once they're enrolled, and classes begin, we start, even before classes begin, we start with orientation week. That's a pretty robust orientation program. And then into the career planning piece from the day they set foot on, even before they set foot on campus, right? Working with our career design lab, who we've had the same representative. It's the larger school professional studies, career planning and placement office. Which is, our primary contact there is, again, a woman named Barbara McGloin, who has been with us for a few years and is terrific and understands, the sports industry pretty well, but is not an expert in the space, but understands it and kind of what we need our students to do. And then once students are largely complete the process of working with Barbara, then they work with our industry specialists, right? So our in-house full-time part of our program, career expert, a woman named Bess Brodsky, who's a 25-year plus veteran of the sports industry, has the proverbial Rolodex, is extremely personable, gets to know the students really well. In many ways, Bess is the most important person in our program, right?
I second that.
Yeah, she's wonderful, right? So, and I think the common thread through all of this on the people side, right, and then on our side, the deputy academic director LJ Holmgren, who is phenomenal. I can't imagine there's anyone anywhere better at what they do in our world than LJ. She's just fantastic. And Tom Cerny, who is our associate director, who is kind of, we laugh about it, but kind of the straw that stirs the drink. I mean, Tom does everything in our program. And then we've got my two full-time faculty colleagues, and Len Elmore and Grant Sun, who are excellent colleagues. And then a list of, like I said, nearing 30 adjunct faculty, who we are in regular contact with. They get it. They understand, they understand the industry really well. They understand what we're all about. They're dedicated to our students. They really, remember, these are folks who are doing something else, right? And they, in other words, they've got a full-time job, and they're part-time faculty, but they are full-time engaged with our students. And that's again, so there's a lot of different pieces on our end, right, that come together. Now that doesn't even mention a lot of the behind the scenes people who are kind of on a dotted line to me, our events people, our student services folks who are part of the larger School of Professional Studies group. It is, and there are many others that work with us and work with our program. So on our end, there's a lot of pieces, and I think most importantly, we all get along really well. We've got great chemistry as a group. We like each other. Or maybe they like each other and they don't like me, right? But certainly, it is a wonderful group to be a part of, and it makes work fun, right? Of course it's still work. There's a reason it's called work, but certainly it makes it a lot of fun for all of us. So, and it helps, it obviously is reflected in our students. Our students see that, I believe. And then the other piece of it, so that's the Columbia piece. It's a really long answer because it's a great question, but then it's on the students, right? So we're providing all of these different opportunities to get involved, but ultimately, right, we can do all these things, but if the students don't take advantage of it, then they're not going to get the most out of the program. So, we're training professionals, the students are adults. And we try to make sure that they are taking advantage of everything, but ultimately it's on the students. We can provide all the opportunities in the world, but the students have to actually take advantage of them. And our students do. It's rare. It does happen where students don't take advantage of it. We push them and cajole them, and here's all the different things that are here. What's going on? Is there anything else we should, that we can help you with? But it's a two-way street, and almost always those two sides are well covered. We're not perfect, right? No one is. We try to never make the same mistake twice. But the student piece of it is so important, and obviously, and I think that what we look for to go back then is we look for students who are also going to be good teammates, right? And so chemistry is really important. We want good people, right? We want people that that like you're happy to have part of, your community. And so ultimately, that's really important, right? We're not, not everyone's going to love each other in the program, of course, right? When you bring this many people together, but we're looking for good people. And that becomes really important.
That's a great answer. I remember innumerable office hours and resume sessions with each of the people that you mentioned. So I think that's extremely helpful in a way for students and the university staff and administrators and professionals and professors to find that sweet spot. How does the program, though, measure its success? Is there a metric that you base your success on?
So there's a lot of different ways you can think about the success of a program. I think what we tell our students is begin with the end in mind, right? We've borrowed liberally from Stephen Covey, and so we want you to think about your career from the beginning of the time you spend with us. So, ultimately, the career piece becomes really important. That's a metric that we look at closely, that we really push on, and it's not an immediate, not always immediate that we know, right? I mean, so, we spend a lot of time on data collection. We spend a lot of time with talking to our students who become alums, on outreach, figuring out what they're doing. And the numbers, look, I mean, there's third parties that collect this data. And, the numbers point quite favorably to us in the sport business surveys. That again, you can take all these public surveys with a requisite grain of salt, because it's a third party and the methodology isn't always great, or anything like that. And again, it depends on response rates and, all the things that go into whether or not a survey is great.
Yeah.
So you can certainly pick issues with it. But the Sport Business Survey, which is the only one that's done globally, for better or worse, looks at our program and has evaluated us to be number one globally in employment 6 months post-graduation. And number two in salary 3 years post-graduation. So by those metrics, we're doing extraordinarily well. I think, but there's little steps along the way that we also look at, a lot of data that we collect, that we've become a lot better at in collecting along the way in terms of where students are and if they're really taking advantage of the opportunities on a career basis that we provide them with.
But in your opinion, how important should employment in program or post-program employment opportunities be for a program's success? Or should it rather be sort of opening up people's horizons and them to broader opportunities in the future?
Well, I think it's both, right? I mean, I think that, obviously we want our students to be employed in the sports industry if they want to be, right? Yeah. We do have students occasionally who go through a program and say, yeah, you know what, this is really cool. It's a great program. But I'm going to choose to stay with what I was doing before or go down a different road. I found this great opportunity, which is fine, right? And good for those individuals for doing so. But most of our students obviously are going to pursue a career in the industry. I think we also look at it. I mean, it's, student experience is really important, but it's important what you look at for student experience. Like there are programs, I'm sure, that are out there where students are really happy because they're having a lot of fun in the program. They're going to the beach every day, depending on where you're located. It's almost like another year of the undergraduate experience, right? And our students definitely have fun. I think they very much enjoy each other's company and kind of form what is likely to be a lifelong career network. But they're coming to us with a purpose, right? And what kind of experience are we providing them both inside the classroom, which is paramount, of course, and outside the classroom, because we really kind of take this approach that it's a 360-degree approach to your education. And it doesn't end when you graduate, right? So we do things now to make sure that, it's really a lifelong learning opportunity for students who come into our program, right? So it doesn't end when you graduate. In fact, it's designed not to end at all. It's supposed to be, hey, here's career guidance along the way when you're working in the industry. Here is lifelong learning opportunities you can have from auditing some of our classes. So there's a lot of ways that you can judge the success of a program that go beyond rankings and employment. And are we, as a program, putting our best foot forward? Are we innovative in our curriculum? Are we doing everything we possibly can to make sure that student experience is optimal?
Right, absolutely. Now, throughout my previous conversations with people, COVID somehow seamlessly made its way into the discussion, quite obviously. But when we talk about the education industry and the sports industry, COVID genuinely has impacted these two industries the most. And Columbia's sports management program is somewhat at the helm of both those industries. How do you think the future of the education industry, especially traditional institutions, is going to be impacted, and in the way the people or students are going to demand to learn?
So it's a great question. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know exactly what's going to play out. We've learned a lot in the last year, right? As we sit here today, it has been 52 weeks to the day since my children last had a full in-person, uninterrupted educational experience, and they're in secondary school and primary school, right? So it's over the last year, we've learned a lot. And I think that a lot of the lessons are lessons we wish we didn't have to learn in a lot of respects, but we try to find silver linings while we can. And what has been obviously just an incredibly difficult year on so many different levels. So, but we still have a job to do professionally, right? And so what do we think it's going to look like going forward? We're probably going to have a few more classes that will be remote, but it'll still be an overall small percentage. This is post-pandemic. This is when we have a full return to normal, right? So when we can be sitting next to each other physically in a classroom without masks on, and it kind of looks a lot like it did in 2019, right? And so we think about, can we do more remote learning? We can. It's not what our program. It's unlikely to be what our program will be. But we will probably have a couple classes that we have learned can be delivered really effectively in a remote fashion. And so those are the kind of real technical classes that it's actually easier for the faculty member to take over the student's computer and take a look and screen share than it is for them to walk around the classroom and look over their shoulder, right? So, but it'll still be limited. I mean, this is still a high, what we imagine to be a highly brick and mortar in-person experience, with a few exceptions here or there in our particular program.
Absolutely. Is there an opportunity to innovate, or do you think there's going to be a demand of a different sort that's going to come out of this sort of hybrid phygital side to the business?
I think so. I mean, you mean in terms of the industry itself?
Yes.
Or our delivery of education to that?
More so the industry and how Columbia perhaps fits into that ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a terrific question. I think there will be changes. I mean, I think the obvious ones involve game day experience. I think this has certainly accelerated the push, for example, to digital tickets, which has been coming, but coming, at a fairly gradual, slow pace. I think the gas pedal has been hit on that one, and we're accelerating. And I'm not sure, quite honestly, we're going to go back to, there might be exceptions for those who don't have a modern cell phone, for those who are tech averse. But I think by and large, we're going to be in a vastly digital experience in terms of ticketing, I think likely in terms of payment methodology, you'll see much, I think your cash will be an option in some buildings, but it'll be much more limited. It'll be a much more cashless experience, which provides all sorts of opportunities for the industry in terms of data collection and analysis. So I think that is absolutely one that will change likely permanently. So that's the big one. I think the other things that have gone on, kind of contemporaneous with the pandemic, have been things that are caused by other forces that just happen to occur during a pandemic, and in maybe one case was accelerated a bit by it. So what I'm referring to there in the United States, there was a big battle over the future of intercollegiate athletics going on, and the ability to limit the earning capacity of the student athletes who are competing in intercollegiate athletics. So I know for your global audience, this is not a very familiar territory, but it is one that's very interesting. So, student athletes, as they're referred to in intercollegiate athletics in the United States, which is a pre-professional model, in the big sports. Although most of the sports that student athletes compete in there's no professional opportunity in those sports, or they're very limited. But in the sports of football and men's and women's basketball and ice hockey and baseball, as examples, there is, that's part of the pre-professional path. And so should those individuals and individuals in other sports as well that aren't typically thought of as professional be able to maximize their earning capacity. And so there's a case going up involving former student athlete. The case is known as Alston v. NCAA, in which oral arguments will be heard in front of the United States Supreme Court, the High Court of the Land, in a matter of weeks. And they'll expect to be a ruling at the end of June in that case, or by the end of June, at the end of the court's term. And that will go a long way to determining, in many ways, the future landscape of intercollegiate athletics in the United States, one way or the other, right? So I think that's one. I think the other that's gone on that has perhaps been impacted by the shutdown has been sports gambling, and again, a byproduct of litigation decided ultimately by the United States Supreme Court a few years ago, which basically opened the door for states to set up and create legalized gambling on sports, right? So at all levels, or not all levels, but at the collegiate level, certainly, and beyond, and above at the professional level. And so when people were sitting around, kind of in the early phases of the shutdown, and bored and not a lot going on, we saw a huge increase in sports gambling, and an uptake in the handle, and in other words, the amount that was being bet. And I think we're still very early on. The majority of the states in the United States have not passed legislation to this point that will allow it, but the train is kind of very steadily, and in some cases quickly, rolling down the tracks to legalize or liberalize the sports gambling rules, which has created really an opportunity in a whole new subset of the industry, right, that a lot of our students are taking advantage of. It's been interesting, and so you're likely to see more programming on our end in that space to get students prepared for that, to try to there's demand for it, and again, our curriculum is constantly evolving. And we want to provide the education that we need to provide in that space.
Wow, very interesting, and two very important topics to think about: NCAA and the space of gambling. I think that's a space to watch out for sure. Lastly, what's your advice to the next crop of sports management students, those looking to enter the sports industry, and what kind of skills should they look out for, and maybe next steps if they want to apply to Columbia?
Yeah, so there's a lot packed into that question, right? So, it is, I think the future is very bright. I'm quite bullish on the future. We're obviously in a difficult moment right now. We'll pull out of it. I don't think that, we're going to see a real decreased, everlasting demand for the sports industry. I'm bullish on it. I think it's resilient. I think it'll bounce back. I think it's going to look a little bit different. I think the bounce back is going to be, it's going to be more gradual. I think, than it will be kind of like an immediate, back to speed, 100% uptick, not like turning on a light switch, right? It's going to be more like, almost like a sunrise, right? Where it comes up and it goes and goes and goes and goes, right? Till it's back at peak, as opposed to an immediate, like the sun's up, right? And we're ready to go. So, I think that is, the likely approach. And I think to that end, students need to, they need to be hungry. They need to, we talk about grit. They need to be scrappy, right? They need to be flexible. They need to, be okay with falling down, and getting back up. They need to be intellectually curious, and be willing to, as you are, right? It's one of your great strengths is you're really intellectually curious, right? And it's reflected, quite frankly, in the questions that you're asking in this podcast, right? So, it is, but you need to be intellectually curious, and again, I think that you need to, it's at some level right now, embrace the unknown. But at the same time, prepare for what you think your future is going to look like and what you want it to look like. And I think you need to take ownership of your future. Again, we can do a lot as a program. You've got to be willing to grind, right? You've got to be willing to, to do the work and be humble in your approach to it, and embrace the journey.
Well, absolutely. I think that's great advice. You as the expert have spoken, but if I could just add to that, it's about constantly sort of reevaluating yourself. And obviously the program does help you do that, especially Columbia Sports Management program. But as you said, a lot depends on how hungry and scrappy the student is. So with that, it brings me to the end of my questions. Thank you so much for taking out the time and taking us through the journey of pre-COVID Columbia Sports Management and how a post-COVID scenario might look like. And I'm sure a lot of listeners, especially those looking to aspire and to enter the industry, will gain a lot of information from this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ananya. It's been a pleasure, an honor to be with you, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And stay well.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share for the best tips and trends in the world of sports business, wherever you listen to podcasts. Reach out over social media to connect or collaborate. Links will be in the bio. See you next time.